Let's take a look at Diamatic's Flor-Color waterborne micronized dye. Before we begin our application, let's make sure we have everything we need. Starting with enough Flor-Color to do the project. Flor-Color comes in 1 gallon and 5 gallon units. We're also going to need some calibrated containers for measuring the water, a mixing container, and some stir sticks to mix the material. Power mixing is not required. We also need to make sure we have proper safety equipment, including latex gloves, a respirator or particle mask, and a pair of safety glasses. Now let's check our application equipment. For this application, we'll be using an HVLP sprayer. That stands for high volume, low pressure. We also want to make sure we have some masking materials available for adjacent areas and wall lines. We're now ready to begin our application. Mixing the Flor-Color Litho-Dye is simple. Start by shaking the container well. We've already placed half the water in the mixing container, keeping half the water available to clean out the bottle. Start by dumping the contents of the dye into the mixing container. Now we'll use some of the remaining water to rinse the dye container out. Now that we have all the color into the mixing container, we can add the balance of the water. We now have a full gallon of water in the mixing container with the litho-dye. Now we just need to stir the container and the product is ready to use. No power mixing is required. Because the Flor-Color Litho-Dye is a pre-inducted solution, the material can be used immediately. Using a smaller cup, we can fill our HVLP sprayer. If you're using a different spraying system, you may be able to mix directly in the sprayer. Here we're filling our HVLP cup. Secure the lid. Now we're ready to apply the material. We begin our application on the Flor-Color by preparing the concrete surface to accept the dye. The floor needs to be ground to a 400 grit diamond. After our surface has been ground to a 400 grit, we can thoroughly clean the surface using an auto scrubber. In some cases, dry cleaning only may be necessary. After the floor has been completely cleaned, we need to allow it to dry before we can begin our application, as water in the substrate can affect the dye. This is also a good time to mask our wall lines and edges. We can adjust our sprayer using a piece of cardboard or a masking material, anything that's out of the way of the surface that we're going to color. Begin the application by spraying a nice even flow over the entire surface. We work the HVLP or the sprayer in a circular motion. We want to spray enough material to get good consistent coverage, but not puddle the material anywhere. Our coverage rate should be 400 to 500 square feet per gallon. The porosity of the surface will affect your coverage rate. A denser and tighter surface will use less material, whereas an open, more porous surface will require additional material. Continue the application until the entire surface has been treated. Allow the material to dry completely before continuing with any further process, including densification. This usually will take between 30 minutes and 1 hour, depending on the ambient temperature.